Welcome to the last lesson in chapter 6 that we will be covering, which is an introduction to higher order polynomials. And so our first section here, we're going to take a look at some basic polynomial functions, some of which you've already seen, and get into the leading coefficient test. So these first two here, you've seen these already, so you don't have to write these ones down, unless of course you really want to. This first one here is f of x equaled x, or y equals x. This is your linear function. The shape is going to be in a line, such as this. And it is either when you have degrees of 0 or 1. And so, for instance, if you had f of x equals 4, or f of x equals 4x. Those would be your linear functions. The second one is the one that we covered very heavily in chapter 5, f of x equaled x squared. This is your quadratic. And as you learned last trimester and into this trimester, that the shape is a parabola or a U shape, or for Bobby, Bobby thinks it's a rainbow, and it has a degree of 2. And so remember that that looks something like this. Now, I want you to pick up your pencils and make sure that if you haven't been drawing these already, you get these next ones. The next one is f of x equals x cubed, and this is going to be a snake shape or an S shape, and it has a degree of 3. You've seen these as a parent function, but we haven't gotten into them too much. That's where we're getting into them now. And this is where it looks something like this. Or it could also possibly be looking the other direction as well, depending on whether it is positive or negative. Our next two are the ones that are brand new to you this chapter. Our fourth degree is our quartic, which is the one that a lot of you guys have a hard time remembering. You keep wanting to say quadratic, but the easy way I think of to remember it is there's 4 quarts to a gallon. Therefore, quartic means 4. These are going to be a W shape or an M shape. This is going to look something like this, or this. And these are 4th degree polynomials. F of x equals x to the 5th is our 5th degree. This one goes back to a snake shape or an S shape. These are our quintic. And the analogy relationship I've been giving to a lot of you guys is if way down the road, like 10 years from now when you guys have kids, if you were to have 5 children at one time, they'd be quintuplets. Save your soul if you have 5 kids all at once, but that's what it would be. And that, like I said, that goes back to our snake or S shape. It could also possibly have a shape that looks like this. And so just be aware that that's what we're talking about. And as you can see, we have our odd functions that are S shaped. So maybe you might want to mark that down, that all odd f of x is going to be the S or snake shape. Now, when we start looking at behavior, we in chapter 5 looked a lot at how we tell if a quadratic function opened up or opened down. And so we're going to talk about this leading coefficient test. And what that is a test that tells that right and left-hand behavior for a graph. And so if we have our function, f of x, it's going to be in the form of a sub n times x to the n power, where a sub n is that leading coefficient, and the n is your degree, and then it will be n minus 1, n minus 2, n minus 3, etc., until you get all the way down to a sub 2x squared plus a sub 1x to the first plus a sub 0, or your constant term. Now, we need to know this because then I've made a table for you. to be able to tell the behavior. If n is odd and a sub n is greater than 0, so for instance, if it was, say, f of x is equal to 3x cubed, where our n is odd, it's 3, and our a sub n, or our leading coefficient, which is 3, is greater than 0, it comes from the left and it falls from the left, and it rises to the right. In other words, this is going to be where it looks like this. And this is falling this direction, rising this direction. Now at the same time, if n is odd but a sub n is less than 0, so say you have y equals negative 2x to the 5th, where n is odd and a sub n is negative or less than 0, then it is going to rise to the left and fall to the right. Now on the other hand, if n is even and a sub n is bigger than 0, so for instance, say you had y equals 4x to the 4th, or y equals 2x squared. Both of these, that n is even and your a sub n is positive. Therefore, it's going to rise from the left and rise from the right, which means that if it's squared, it'll look like this. If it is a quartic, it'll look like this. Now, on the other hand, if n is even but a sub n is less than 0, such as y equals negative 3x to the 4th, or y is equal to negative x squared. If it is negative x squared, it's falling to the left and falling to the right, which means your parabola will look like this, or it'll be, if it is a quartic, it'll be M-shaped. Now, we're going to use this in the next video to show how our functions operate and the behaviors of them.